Welcome back to Beyond, a transformational space dedicated to you living a life beyond the mind, beyond the stories, and beyond the limits. If you are new here, I am Lynn Rojano, former psychotherapist, coach, and identity expert. Today, we dive deep into vision. Have you ever been prompted to write down your vision and goals for the next year, only to feel completely stumped or even frozen after writing them down? Or maybe you have felt full of enthusiasm, writing out the big dream, only to find yourself a few hours later sucked back into your standard routine with the vision you wrote down completely erased from your conscious awareness as if it never happened. I'll be the first to tell you that I have lived through both scenarios on multiple occasions throughout my life. And over the last 2 decades, there are 3 themes I see unfold time and time again for women who are struggling to access their next level, despite their deep knowing that it is time for them to grow. These 3 things are, number 1, a lack of clarity, which can sound something like, I'm not even sure what I want, or I don't know what to choose. Number 2 is overwhelm, which can sound like I feel stuck or I'm in a slump. And number 3 is ambiguity, which can sound a lot like I'm going to surrender and I'm just going to let it flow. And all 3 of these, while sounding valid, really can derail progress, create confusion, and perpetuate unnecessary struggle. But the good news is there is one solution that dissolves all 3 almost instantly. Let's start with a question, because a powerful question leads to a life-altering answer when we are willing to be honest and get uncomfortable in the process. When you think about your future, the life you say you desire, how specific is it? I mean, genuinely specific and full of detail and robust with visuals. Not, I want freedom, or I want to feel at peace, or I want to be successful, or not even, I want a 7-figure business. If your vision currently exists in the realm of the general and the aspirational, I'd like to invite you to consider this today. Sometimes the general and broad descriptions of our dreams are a way for us to protect ourselves from disappointment, from heartbreak, or from the risk of feeling like a failure if it doesn't work out. It could also be a form of protection from the fear of being judged for wanting more, feeling embarrassed because we aren't really sure how we'll even get there, or a fear of wanting something so big that we will no longer belong with the people that we love the most. It is natural and even a sign of a healthy brain and nervous system when we experience this kind of resistance, fear, or doubt, because when we decide to grow, it is always growth in a direction that is new for us, right? We're not growing backwards. Our intention is never to grow backwards. And newness, while it can be exciting and inspiring, it is also unfamiliar and full of uncertainty. In this episode, I'd like to go deeper. Surprise, we're going deep. And this is because most people unconsciously think that vision has to do with results. They think a goal is related directly to an outcome, when really vision is all about informing the process, how we get there and who we be while we're in that process. So I spent years with a vision that I thought was clear. It had words like impact and financial freedom and scale in it. And I built toward it. I put effort toward it persistently, intelligently, and with genuine commitment. But no matter what I did, it kept feeling just slightly out of reach, not dramatically out of reach, not like I was completely off track or in a way that I felt like a failure. It just felt slightly, consistently, frustratingly out of reach. I remember sitting and looking around and being like, how are all these other people figuring this out? And yet I feel like I am a duck treading water. Then one afternoon, I was doing what I now teach in mental mastery. I was running a reactive loop, choosing a new thought, running a conscious loop, building a new story in my body. And my coach at the time asked me a question that I had never been asked before. She said, when you picture the version of you that has what you say you want, what is she wearing? I stopped for a moment because it kind of broke my brain. It sounded almost absurd. But in that moment, I realized that I couldn't see her. I couldn't see this future version of myself that I said I was so committed to creating. I could feel a general excitement when I imagined success or impact or even scaling, but I could not see this future version of me clearly inside that success or that impact or that journey of scaling. I couldn't see what she wore. I couldn't see where she was sitting, and I definitely couldn't define what this future version of me had decided that she would no longer tolerate or never do again. I could see clearly what she had, and catch this. Seeing what she had meant I was missing two critical components of creation. I was missing the being and the doing. And we all know that the being and the doing is what creates the having. So I could envision what I wanted the future version of me to have, the impact and the financial freedom and the success. But because these were such vague concepts, they gave me no real insight as to who I would need to be today in this moment, or what I would need to do right now to then have what I said I desired. This vagueness was a huge blind spot for me, and it is a huge blind spot for so many women I coach. It's never really the strategy or the effort like we talked about in the last episode of Beyond, because all the women that I work with are naturally incredibly ambitious and wildly intelligent. The issue was the vision was so general that I really had no way to evaluate if I was making progress towards this future vision in my current reality, day to day. Like metaphorically, it felt like I was telling my internal GPS to take me somewhere warm. And then I would feel disappointed when I ended up in the middle of the desert instead of a gorgeous island of Hawaii. So that day, I decided to do something I hadn't done before. I got specific. And what I learned in this process is that getting specific felt surprisingly vulnerable for me. I mean, I started asking, what does a Tuesday look like for my future self? What time do I wake up? And where is the first place my mind goes when I open my eyes? What am I investing my mental, emotional, and spiritual energy into? Also, what am I no longer investing my mental, emotional, and spiritual energy into? Who is by my side as I'm creating this dream life for myself? How am I deciding what I say yes to and what I say no to? What am I most proud of myself for? And what are the qualities that other people notice most about me? What am I hearing about who I'm being, and what am I focusing on in every space that I walk into? And when I challenged myself to get this specific, something shifted in my chest in a way that I had never experienced before. But it really made sense because specificity really matters at the level of neuroscience. I mean, I'm like every other woman who loves a Pinterest vision board and loves to be able to create and play in the world of visioning. But the science says that our brains, specifically our prefrontal cortex working in partnership with our hippocampus, literally cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined future and our present reality when our imagination is specific enough. This is not metaphysics or woo-woo. It's actually been studied for decades, and those who experience their declared visions come to life, like professional athletes, successful investors, business owners, and even women like you and me, we use it to our advantage. So when the vision is vague, the brain simply disregards it because it doesn't know how to process the vision accurately. So it gets discarded fast because the brain does not have enough data to recognize the vision when it shows up in reality. Imagine someone you love says, "Hey, I'm inviting you to this event." And then they never give you any details about the event they just invited you to. No date, no time, no dress code. Heck, it could be a wedding or it could be a challenging hike, and you would have no idea. What is the likelihood that you would be able to show up to this event and enjoy yourself? My guess is you might feel excited about being invited, but you would definitely need more details. Well, the same thing happens when we have a vision. We say, I want to be successful. And my first question is, how would you know when you have reached the level of success you say you desire? How would you recognize it with your eyeballs? And how would you feel it in your nervous system? When the vision is so specific that you can feel it in your body, you can see it like a movie in your mind, and it feels so real to your brain that your brain actually begins to reorganize itself around that vision as if it is already real. The reticular activating system, or the lens, which we talked about last week, recalibrates because it knows the details to look for in our reality. It understands the specificity that identifies our new reality. The nervous system, which otherwise resists the new and the unfamiliar, begins to soften and recognize the details of our desired future as something it can easily accept, because the details are what create safety for our whole system. Remember, to our human brains, familiar is safe. So familiarity is what the nervous system is always seeking. This is why the redesign phase of the RED method asks you to get specific to the point of discomfort, not because the details or results are the end point, but because the details are the signals to your brain that your vision is being actualized. And these signals are what make the new identity acceptable to your nervous system. A nervous system that is able to recognize the future self as familiar is a nervous system that will stop sabotaging or resisting the transformation altogether. Maybe you're like me and getting specific feels vulnerable and maybe even a little confusing. Maybe you think, I don't want to limit myself with a vision that's too specific. Or what if I get specific and I get it wrong? Or maybe even something like, I should hold the vision loosely so the universe has room to surprise me. I know my brain used to have these kinds of thoughts, and I really do think that they are valid in their own right. I mean, we definitely want to be open and not limit ourselves in what we desire and what we can receive. But what I came to terms with in this process was that while those thoughts might be valid, I really got to ask if they're helpful and in what ways are they helping me. When I got curious about the resistance to specificity, I quickly learned that these resistant thoughts were rooted in apprehension and fear. These thoughts of wanting to get it right or not limit myself were a very sneaky form of protection that sounded really good, but they were ever so subtly attached to protecting myself from the possibility of experiencing emotional discomfort. I don't know about you, but making mistakes, being judged, being misunderstood, or feeling less than capable can be very uncomfortable for me. The thought, I don't want to limit myself, meant I could rationalize being vague to limit the possibility of disappointment or shame if the vision didn't work the way that I really wanted it to. And the thought, what if I get it wrong, is actually perfectionism speaking along with the fear that commitment increases the likelihood of failure if the vision shifts. A specific vision is not a contract, it's a compass, and there are so many different routes to arrive at a specific destination. But we need a clear destination in order to know if our next move should be north, south, east, or west. And the thought of, I want to leave room for the universe can also be tricky because while I honor the spiritual intelligence in this, I also want to name something very clearly. Surrendering the vision before you have claimed it is not trust. It's actually avoidance. And surrender has nothing to do with the vision itself. It has everything to do with the process by which the vision unfolds. We have to do the work of declaring the vision before we can meaningfully release the outcome. Vagueness is not spiritual. Vagueness is self-protection wearing a righteous philosophical costume. Declaring a specific vision is an act of radical faith and vulnerability. It is you saying, I am willing to be exposed and I am willing to revise and I'm willing to be seen holding a direction with enough conviction that my nervous system adapts quickly to this new reality I'm creating in real time. This is the power of declaring a specific vision, and this is the whole architecture of the redesign phase of the RED method. Now, let me walk you through what a specific vision actually looks like in practice. I'm going to take you through the 3 dimensions because a vision that only lives in one dimension will not translate into our 3-dimensional reality. So, dimension 1 is what I call the lived daily texture. This is not the big achievement or the outcome, but it's the day-to-day happenings. This is where we imagine that ordinary Tuesday, right? Because the ordinary Tuesday is where our identity actually lives. I ask myself questions like, what time do I wake up in the version of my life that I want to see created? What does my morning feel like in my body? Does it feel rushed or does it feel spacious and anchored? What kinds of thoughts does my future self think? What kinds of decisions does my future self no longer have to make because they're no longer relevant to my new reality? And dimension 2 is the relational reality. This new version of me. Who is she in relationship? How does she receive? And what does she ask for in terms of agreements and commitments? How does she ask for what she needs? What has she stopped tolerating for the sake of being loved or accepted or belonging? And most importantly, how does this new version of myself actually regard herself in each and every moment? How does she speak to herself, honor herself, and walk herself through the challenges when they arise? Because we all know that they will. This dimension, this relational reality, is often most uncomfortable to get specific about because it requires us to name not just what we want to build, but who we are willing to be in relationship to ourselves and other people as we build. And finally, dimension 3 is what I call the somatic signature. This is the one people skip or avoid entirely. When somebody asks you to write a vision, we can often have a hard time bringing it into the body. So this new version of you, how does she feel in her body? Not just in her mood, but her physical body. Is there a settled quality in her chest that is different from the stress and pressure she might carry right now? Is there a particular kind of thoughtfulness and peace in how she makes decisions because she is no longer operating from scarcity or fear? Can you feel the possibility of that in your body right now as you consider it? These 3 dimensions, when put together, the daily texture, the relational reality, and the somatic signature, create a specific vision. And when you have all 3, your brain and your nervous system really cannot help but make this new vision a reality. Let me take you through a piece of this right now in real time. I want you to imagine your future self on a regular Tuesday. And I want you to ask yourself, what is the first thing you notice in your body when you wake up on this future Tuesday morning? Is it dread? Is it anticipation? Or is it a kind of peaceful and confident readiness? Allow yourself to go there. You don't have to be there for very long, but just long enough to feel the difference between your past Tuesdays and the one your future self lives in. That difference, the difference in sensation between the Tuesdays of your past and the Tuesdays of your future, that visceral difference is not a problem to be fixed. It is information. It is data showing you exactly where your work is and giving you an opportunity to get present in this moment to make a different choice. I worked with a client named Michelle who came to me with a vision of building something her daughters could be inspired by. Those were her exact words. And according to Michelle, she had this desire for over 3 years. So I asked Michelle, I said, Michelle, how would you know that you had built something your daughters could be inspired by? We spent one session dismantling the vagueness. Not the aspiration, because the aspiration was heartfelt, it was genuine, and it was admirable. But the vagueness was actually stopping Michelle from even getting started. So we sat together and we took the time to get very specific. We specified the sentiments her daughters would share with her in the future. We specified what her office would look like. We specified the dominant emotions she would feel and how she would model resilience, grit, and loving leadership for her daughters. We named the thoughts and the emotions that might cause her to self-sabotage. And we also got really specific on how she would respond when those emotions and those thoughts came up. We specified the types of relationships that she was no longer available for. And we even scripted the ways in which she would speak to herself throughout the day. At the end of that session, Michelle said, "For the last 3 years, I feel like I have been putting all of this effort into trying to find a building with no address, right? Been trying to get somewhere with no real clear final destination in mind." And that was exactly it. Michelle can't get those 3 years back, but with the specific vision that she created, she will absolutely collapse time as she moves forward, because that is what specificity does. It collapses time and it gives us the opportunity to utilize our most precious, unreplaceable, and unrenewable resource, which is time. Now that we know exactly where we are going and what could get in the way, we can avoid unnecessary detours or distractions, and we can intentionally take the shortest, smoothest route there. And guess what? Within 2 months, Michelle had closed her largest contract ever. Her oldest daughter did a school presentation all about how she wanted to be just like her mom. And Michelle was able to hire 2 team members that would allow her to grow her business faster and with more ease. In my work, I witness the miracles of a specific vision every single week, not just with my clients, but in my own life. And as you hear this, I want to give you your homework for this week. Now, your homework for this week might be the most vulnerable assignment I've given you yet. And I'm inviting you into it because I know how fast transformation happens when we do this one thing. So I want you to write out your specific vision across all 3 dimensions that I shared earlier: the lived daily texture, the relational reality, and the somatic signature. When you sit down to write, make sure you write it in present tense, as though it is already happening and already true. You can start your writing with something like, "It's Tuesday morning, I wake up," and then fill in those blanks. Give it at least a full page with as much detail as possible. Let it be specific enough that you could recognize it instantly in real time. And as you are writing out your 3-dimensional vision, notice the resistance. Notice what the resistance says in thought, or how it feels in your body. Because remember, the resistance is really important data showing you exactly where the old identity is still hanging on and where you are being asked to stretch into the new one that you are creating. That stretch is the work. And even you taking the time to listen to this episode really tells me that you're ready for it. When you have completed the 3-dimensional vision homework exercise, send me a message on Instagram. I am here to support you, to champion you, and to remind you that what you write down is just waiting for you to claim it right now. Next week, we are going to talk about what it means to embody the woman you are becoming before your external reality catches up, and why this is the most powerful step in the entire process. So, if this episode shifted something for you, take the time and be generous and share it with a woman you would like to see win alongside you. I am Lynn Rojano, and I hope you take this opportunity to go beyond the mind, beyond the stories, and beyond the limits. I will see you next week.